Hey everybody, welcome back to Street Cred. Hope you had a Merry Christmas and you did something cool for somebody over the break so far. This episode, I am joined by my man Ryne Jungling. Ryne and I have been buds for a few years. We've worked some camps together. I actually coached against him in college when he was at UND, and then a little baseball here and there. But Ryne reached out a few weeks ago and said, hey, if you ever do something a little more serious, he would love to be a guest and talk about grief. And his grief and learning how to deal with it came from a tragic accident that him and his wife Rachel had to endure. That is basically every parent's, worst nightmare. Okay, they dread it. The thought process of even getting a phone call that something has happened to one of your babies, one of your kids. And that happened last year with their son Anders, who passed away in a sort of a freak accident. And so Ryne goes into how he dealt with it, what led up to it, and then sort of what has made him want to do something like come on a podcast that you know is going to be on the internet, talk to your buddy about how you went through it and why you want to do this. So it was awesome for me. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you get something out of it and find some perspective. So here it is, Street Cred Podcast with Ryne Jungling.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
Everybody, welcome back. Little different tone today. We're going to talk about grief, and we're going to talk about adversity and how we overcome it. I got my buddy Ryne. Ryne, how you doing, buddy?
Good.
Introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah, Ryne Jungling. I've known Eddie for probably a handful, 5-6 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe more than that. Through coaching, and I teach over in Mandan at the high school, and I'm excited to be here.
Awesome, man. Now, you have a very sad yet positive story. Like as time goes on, the more time goes on about how to deal with grief. You lost one of your twins. You had twins, Anders and
Linnea.
Yep. And Anders passed away last January, correct?
Yeah.
So give us some backstory about how Anders passed and what that time in your life was.
For sure. So, so Linnea and Anders were born January 30th of 2018, and they were early, but for twins, they were pretty good sized, really healthy kids when they got out of the
Which
NICU.
is also, like, for those who don't know, like with twins, like being healthy and in size and all that, especially being, like you mentioned off camera, like they're IVF kids.
Right,
like that's a big thing for parents. Like, yes, they're healthy, we're good.
For sure. Yeah, there was, it was tough to get pregnant, and so we did, IVF, and the first round didn't work, and the second round we ended up with twins, and they spent a couple weeks in the NICU, but it was for eating just because they came early, and they were really healthy kids. And Rachel was able to stay home with them for a while, and then came back to school. And when the fall rolled around, we had them in daycare. So she teaches or taught at Wachter.
She was a assembly homie for a while, and then she had to do
for sure.
We'll never forgive her for that part. Carry on.
So she went back to work, and they went to daycare, and right after Christmas, January 10th, it was right at the end of the semester, where I actually had semester tests that day, and I didn't have any kids in the classroom, and she got a call that Anders was unresponsive, and that we were supposed to go to the emergency room. And we found out later that he was kept in his car seat from the time she dropped him off. He was kept in his car seat at daycare. And so we went to sleep.
Okay.
And he never woke up. So, like, keeping kids in the car seat, it was something we were really aware of. When we left the NICU, they gave us this long list of ways that your kid can die.
Right. I've seen, like, my nephew was like that. I've seen these lists, man. It's like CVS receipt type.
They just go through everything. Yep. They just rattle off all this stuff, and then it's like, here you go. We just unplugged your child from all the monitors.
Go get them.
Here's all the ways that they can die, and
and
here you go. And that was pretty terrifying right away.
Right.
But you know it, and you kind of study up on it.
And it's terrifying for a parent. Period. I remember, like, for me, like we had Memphis was a C-section, like an emergency C-section, and like everything was good. He came out. They put him on a trolley, and we're like, here you go. And I pushed him to the room while Tia got patched up, and I'm just like in the room, like, what up? Like,
What do I do?
Yeah, like, is this it? Like, what's happening? Like,
Yeah.
let's go. So it is. It's a very relieving, but also awkward. Like, okay, what?
Right.
Good luck, man. It's gonna work out.
Yeah, and everybody that works with births in the birth unit or people in the NICU, that's what they do.
Yeah.
And so they're just comfortable.
Yeah.
And I remember when we were just getting, because they spent 20 days in the NICU, and so at like day 16 they started to talk about, wow, they're getting pretty good. We could probably think about sending them home in like the next week or something. And then it was like a Friday, I got a text and I'm at work and Rachel was at the hospital and she's like, yeah, I think that they're going to have us stay overnight. I think they're going to have us stay overnight tomorrow night and have the twins in the room, like unplugged and everything. And I think we're going to go home.
Perfect.
All right. Well, that's great. But what are we going to do now?
Right,
you know, because we just got so comfortable with it. But yeah, they were.
So you get the phone call, you get the text or the phone call from whomever saying you got to get to the hospital.
Yeah. So Rachel so it was like about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Rachel called me and I've never heard her voice like that.
Right.
And it was just something happened to Anders and I think it's really bad and you got to go to the hospital. And it was, so I jump in the car and we go to the hospital and she actually got picked up by the police. The police came to walk her. She just had, when she got the call, she just had students walking into the room.
Right.
And so Wes Carr,
crazy,
right next door, he just took all the kids and so she headed out to the car and the police were like, we're coming to get you. And she didn't, like they weren't there.
Right.
So she got in the car and she started driving and the police car drove up and so she's on the way to the hospital and I was on the way to the hospital and it was just, it was surreal. You know, you walked in the emergency room and I saw, it was in like the far corner of the emergency room and there was just a bunch of people and a bunch of commotion and there was a detective inside the door at the emergency room. They opened the door. I didn't have to tell anybody who I was. They just knew that, you know, I was there for him and Rachel was sitting on a chair on the far side of the emergency room just outside of Anders' room and that was a experience you don't anticipate ever having to go through.
I think as a parent, it truly is, like, not to be too cliche, but it very much is like the worst thing you could, like the worst thing as a parent, right? You get a phone call like, hey man, something's happened to your kid. That's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I can't, I even think about now I get a call from daycare, like your kid's sick and you're like, dang it. Like, okay, I'll be over there as soon as I can.
Right.
But just because your kid like, you know, has the flu or ate something bad.
Right.
I mean, Memphis said the other day he threw up and I get there and he's like, yeah, something just didn't sit right. I'm good. But you kind of are like on the way, like, okay, what do I got to do? I got to take him to the doctor.
For sure.
I got to call Tia. You got to call whomever. So that's a struggle.
Yeah.
So all this happens, like you go through, the grieving process obviously starts.
Yeah. So actually we had a couple days with him, which
Okay.
was, so he's in the emergency room. EMTs, they did CPR on him, and 40 minutes of CPR, and they
On
got
a
his
1-year-old is,
Yeah.
on anybody's crazy, but
Yeah.
a 1-year-old's nuts.
And so they get his heart started again. And so he's sitting in the emergency room and they knew that they couldn't handle anything in Bismarck. So they flew him air med to Fargo. And so we went to Fargo and spent a couple days. And so he had his incident in the morning on a Thursday and then Saturday afternoon, which is really fast.
Right.
But those 2 days I think were really important for us too. Saturday afternoon he passed away. So
Did you, like, so those 2 days, like, it helped just sort of, not closure, but you know what I mean? Like, you just sort of got to say sort of, it wasn't just abrupt, you know what I mean?
yeah, there something big happened in those 2 days. That just it really helped to not, you know, there was hope, there was a chance, but there was also lots of opportunity. Yeah, to say goodbye, sure, to hold him a little bit, but just something about not walking in to the emergency room and your son has passed away already.
Yeah.
was pretty powerful for us.
Right.
So
Right. So this happens, grieving process starts, and you got to find a way.
Yeah.
And I know you're big into your faith.
Yep.
And so I know that was big for you.
Yeah.
Aside from that, like how do you go about handling something like that?
Well, you're not prepared.
Right.
You
I
know,
don't think,
and that's I think a really big thing that we've taken away from it, is that, you know, with what we've gone through and other people that we know that have gone through something similar, there's no timeline.
Yeah.
And there's no timeline for each individual person. There's no timeline for an event to where you should be. There's no shoulds.
Right.
It's going to happen the way it happens. You know, but I think the biggest thing for us was the people that were around us, that were willing to grieve with us, that were willing to step in and kind of take care of some things that, you know, we just didn't think that we needed to take care of.
Right.
You know, so he passed away on a Saturday. We stayed overnight on Saturday night, and then we came back on Sunday. And you know, one of those people is one of our pastors at church. He met us at the hospital in Bismarck. He drove us to Fargo. He was with us the entire time, drove us back on Sunday. And so people like that just stepped into our situation and were there for us. Rachel's good friends and a couple of my aunts and uncles, they came over to our house and cleaned our entire house. And
Which seems minute, but it's such a big...
it was huge.
It's such a big deal.
It was huge, especially when people were going to come over to our house and be there. And they took, they asked us, because, you know, I know that people are going to grieve differently.
Right.
You know, some people lock off the room of the child and they never touch it again.
Right.
That wasn't us. You know, our kids stayed in the same room. We
Right.
couldn't walk into.
Because you had like those other things,
Right.
like you had another twin, like
Yeah,
you got to still be parent.
You know, she's just about a year at this time,
Right.
and you still got to be there for her, and she recognized that things were different, but they were in the same room. Right. And so some friends of ours went and took everything of his down and just put it downstairs and just got rid of it, changed the room, changed the layout, moved the camera, you know, like just even the little things, which really helped. That was a start to where we didn't have to come home and then remove that.
Right.
And so all of those things were pretty important early on, and just people that check in, and it's not just checking in for the first week, it's checking in for forever.
Right.
You know?
I think it's crazy to think. So, I had a cousin of mine pass away a couple years ago from suicide, and when I talk to students about that, when we have them in health class and we talk about prevention and all this depression and such, is how many people are actually out there who actually care. It's crazy. Like you could probably tell me right now, and I could name off, 30 people who would care if something happened to me or my family or something. And I know there'd be more, but I feel like the outpouring would be so much more. And so dealing with that it's not a solo gig, man.
No,
it's not. Like it can't be.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
Like I'm huge on, I disassociate fairly well. Like when something bad, I can just, okay, I'm over here, and right, I'll deal with that later. Especially being away from home, like any of my home stuff that's tragic or deaths or whatever, like I don't have to see it every day. And it's a little selfish. Like I argue with my family sometimes about it, right? It is because I'm out here, but it is what it is. Like it's how I deal with it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, when I need to start dealing with it, like it's never a solo deal. It's never a solo deal.
No, for sure.
So so these kids who are going through some things, like they have to understand, I think you being a teacher too, you talk to these kids, like what do you need? Nothing. Nobody cares. And no, like this can't be just a you thing, right? And you talked about the reason. So Jungling reached out to me a couple weeks ago about wanting to do this and talk about grief and how to handle it, and understanding that, like, it seems like the end of the world, but you gotta keep it moving.
Yeah. Right.
And the one reason you wanted to do it was there was a tragedy in Mandan over Thanksgiving break.
Yeah.
And it was one of your students.
Yeah.
A young lady in a car accident. Yeah. And so you found yourself in a position to empathize with students. It's not just, hey, I'm a teacher, I'm trained in SEL, and I can talk to you about this, right? It's like this is for, I can get up here and I can tell you every single thought you're probably having or every single feeling. So go into that a little bit of how you got to sort of touch some of those kids at school during that time.
Yeah. I think through this whole process, probably one of the, like you're talking about, not going alone.
Right.
We were planning for Anders' funeral, and something that a parent never wants to
Right.
sit in that meeting. Like 2 days after he passes away, but we're just like, I don't know how many people. There's not gonna be a lot of people here.
Right.
Nobody's gonna come. And my wife said he doesn't even have any friends.
Right.
Like
kids
he
at
doesn't
daycare
have
don't
any
even
friends.
know. Like right.
And there were like 500 people there.
Crazy. It's crazy, man.
It was online through our church's website, and like 600 people watched it. Like that doesn't make any sense.
No.
But it's the people that are there for us and
Right.
there for our family and for our friends and to just be supportive. That was so powerful.
Right.
I like funerals and grief. I have totally changed. I would never have gone to a funeral. I would, the prayer services or the, whatever the night before.
Right, I got you.
Like that was never something that I was super comfortable with. But just when people stepped into my life in that situation, that was so huge.
Right. And it takes no effort. Like that's the other thing. I think people make it a big deal. Like I gotta go. No, like it takes no effort to throw a text out.
Yep.
It takes no effort to, show up like a half hour out of your day or something
sure.
like anything like sending flowers. Like it's no effort whatsoever. It takes away none of your day.
And on the receiving end, it's so powerful.
It's so huge.
And so when I came back to school last year, I was out for a week. It just, for me, sitting around wasn't going to do it.
Right.
It wasn't going to be what I needed to do. And so I went back to school, and I just I showed up and I just said, what do you guys want to know? Like, let's just talk.
Because that's got to be like a blurred, like elephant in the room,
Oh,
right, where
for
everybody
sure.
knows about it,
For
but
sure.
like the kids, even because you teach a higher level class at Manning, so you have older kids, and so they're very well aware. I mean, nowadays you can't get around anywhere without kids knowing it anyway.
For sure.
But they know, so you got to address it, right? You got to address it. So you come back to school and like you want to talk to your kids, like.
Yeah,
ask questions, please. So
I moved a desk up to the front, and all day I just sat at the desk, and I told them first thing, I said, you can smile. It's okay.
Right.
Because it would be like walking down the hall, and then they would put their head down.
Right.
Because nobody knows how to react, right?
And especially like at 17, 16, whatever they are,
sure.
like they're for sure. I could see some adults like, hey,
Yeah.
you okay over there?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And so we just talked, and I answered questions in that were specific to the situation,
Right.
and but I just tried to be real.
Yeah.
Like I think you do a good job of that too.
I try.
Just be real with kids.
Right.
Kids would rather have somebody be real with them than somebody that it just looks like a job.
Right.
And so at the beginning of the year this year, I did the same thing. That was
with the new thing
with
as
my
students.
new class. I just
Gotcha.
said let's just talk about this because this is going to affect me, and I never know when it's going to affect me.
Right.
So I need you to know kind of what I'm thinking. And so we had already done that once, and so when Alexis passed away, that's what we did. And we got a statement from the school, like very standard school stuff, and read it to class, and we just sat and chatted, and I thought it was really powerful for kids. And I just opened it up and just said, hey, if you need to talk, let's talk. Send me a message if you don't want to talk to me face to face. And just the conversations that we were able to have, that not everybody grieves the same.
Yeah.
There were people that sent me messages that said things like, I don't even know her, and this really hurts.
Right.
Our class isn't going to be complete anymore. But then there were people that said, I don't feel anything, even though I was good friends with her.
Right.
Like hasn't sunk in yet.
Right.
And just to be able to address it, because I think that people have perceptions of what it's supposed to be like.
Right.
But when you get into it, you don't know how you're going to react.
Especially as like a first timer. It sounds poorly, but like as a first. I remember when I finally moved out here, my biggest fear was getting a phone call that like somebody I was really close to died. And after the first one, you don't know how to act. Like, okay, I got to leave now. It's like, well, now as time has gone on and like my grandparents get older and pass and stuff, like I handle it
so much different.
Yeah.
But the first time I go, remember back of me just being like what do I do? I'm not sure. I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what's the case here.
Yeah,
you know?
and I never had that at 16,
Right,
or
yeah.
17 or
Right.
18, and I'm grateful for that. And I just told the kids, I'm sorry that you have to go through this.
Right.
That it sucks, but
Does.
but that was pretty powerful to just have those conversations with kids. And I had a lot of kids that just said that they appreciated it, because you can, life happens, and life is more important than a content
Right.
or anything like that.
And I think those students too, like they're gonna remember that conversation more, I think, than any history, U.S. history
For
fact in
sure.
that class, right?
For
Or
sure.
any like,
Yep.
hey, remember when we talked about this, that, or the third? Like they're not.
Yeah.
Who cares what your grade was?
Exactly.
Like nobody's gonna look back and
Exactly.
be like, hey, remember that time I got a B in history, in
Yeah.
AP history? Like, no, remember the time like we got to talk and
Yeah.
we actually got to figure stuff out. And I think kids, I think that's a huge thing for them. Like there's so much more important stuff. Like your grades and stuff will take care of themselves and everything, but you got to be you, and you got to figure stuff out for yourself too. And I think the
Absolutely.
one thing for them in an age, not to sound old, but in an age where like information happens now. Like we're in an age of information where you can get anything you want like this.
Yep.
Something like grief or something like some adversities, they just take time.
Yep.
Like it just takes not forever, but I
Yeah.
mean it takes a little bit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's nothing you can rush. Like this day is going to go by the same way.
Yep.
No matter how like I want it to go by or what my attitude is towards the day, like it's still going to take me to this spot. How am
Yeah.
I want to be on this spot a week from now, a month from now, a year from now?
Yeah.
So you had some time, but you didn't have a lot of time because you guys got pregnant again.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
is
that's
crazy. Like
absolutely
ASAP,
crazy.
like a month later.
Yeah, it was actually so Anders died on the 12th, and then his funeral was on the 19th. So it would have been the next week. And then it was the next Friday. I got a call from Rachel at school, like, you got to come home right now. And that's pretty much the same call that I got.
Yeah, God damn, man, I can't.
And this is like right at the end of the day. I had a prep, and so I headed out like 10 minutes early, and she got home, and with the twins, it was a super high risk pregnancy.
Right.
And so she knew all these things that needed to happen for, so that the baby would be healthy.
Right.
And so she needed to get to the hospital to double check
I
before
got
the
you.
end of the day, before the weekend, because she wasn't taking the vitamins and
stuff
stuff like that
right, yep.
that she was used to taking. And so, yeah. And so we found out just right away, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
And Elias is here, and
Right. I
it's
couldn't imagine. He's like
it's pretty
almost
crazy.
3 months old now, something like
just
that?
about 3 months, and and it's insane. He sort of looks like Anders.
Yeah.
His hair color's almost the same. He is chunky and big, which is what Anders was,
Right.
and so, but he's very. I mean, he's not the same personality.
Right. And
And it's good. It's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that he's not a replacement.
Right, exactly.
That
like
was.
I think that's a big, like, have to look at it. Like, this guy's not replacing the next guy.
Right.
It's just, this is
Right.
what we have.
Yeah.
This is,
Yeah. So it's been really fun. It's been really fun for Linnea, because she,
Right.
we were wondering, well, what does a 1-year-old do with like, do they go through grief, and
Right.
what process do they go through? And we looked it up, like, how long does a 1-year-old remember?
right.
And we found out that it was about 6 weeks. And the more we talk to people, 6 weeks is kind of the really, really tough time.
Yeah.
For the grief process in
Probably just because of the
kind of
change, I'm
general.
assuming, right? Probably mostly because of the
Right.
change. Because kids, for all you non-parents out there, kids are so regimented for the
Right.
most part. Like, my
Yep.
kids want this, that, or the third at this time of the
Yep.
day. And so, like, those 6 weeks could be weird because now your schedule or your repetitions are
Right.
so much different
Yep.
without that one person who's
Yep.
always there.
Yep. And just in grief, I think that 6 weeks, people are really probably good for 6 weeks to check up.
Right.
And then, like, the world kind of moves on, but you don't.
Right.
And 6 weeks is also the time that a 1-year-old remembers. So when 6 weeks hit for us, that was really hard.
Yeah.
Because now we're like, oh, well, she doesn't remember her brother.
Right.
And if she doesn't remember her brother,
Right.
But
So you're gonna have that conversation with her eventually, like over the course of time, or
so I talked to some people. It's also amazing when something like grief happens, how many people will reach out with similar stories.
right.
So for us, it's parents that have lost children. For others, it's people that have lost people in the same way or similar, and that really helped. And so somebody that we know had a similar situation. Their kids were a little younger, and I said, "So did you have to tell your daughter?" I said, "No. You just they just know because they and I can see it with Linnea. We've got a picture of Anders up, and she'll point at him and Anders, and it's pretty cool. And,
Right.
And where's Anders at? Anders is in heaven, and she'll like say that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it's good. She asks for videos. She'll come up and videos of Anders.
Right. So
and
like
so
she'll get it without having to
from
actually
the
just right.
Yeah.
I didn't think
at
of it
some
like
point
that.
we'll probably have to talk about like what happened.
Right.
But she knows that he's there.
Right.
That she knows that he was here.
Right.
That she was his brother and stuff like that. So
that's fantastic, man. So I mean, it's tough to wrap your head around, Johnson. Like because like it's something as a parent I don't want to say we've all, I don't want to put him in it, but I for sure have left my kid in a car seat to sleep, like not knowing any better. Like I remember tiptoeing down my apartment steps, like holding it as level as I could, like I was at the space carrying 7 beers on a tray, and like setting him down and being like, okay, like
don't
you're
wake a
good.
sleeping baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You know what I mean? Like I'm no lights on, like no sound. Like
Yep.
I'm just gonna sit over here and let him. And something like that happens is crazy. But out of that, you learn how to deal with some things.
Oh,
and
man.
learn a lot about yourself. Because I don't know, like even when you guys did your interview on the news, like a month and a half later, 2 months later, maybe it was like March or April of that same year.
Yeah, that
something
was
like that. Like just watching how, even now, like very not non-emotional, but just being able to talk about it, like I know that right away, like anger was going to be my first part. Like I'd lose my damn mind. But watching how strong you guys have been is super awesome. The fact you get to share your story with students, and students, they feed off that kind of stuff. Like not just being able to say, yeah, I know what you're going through when you don't. Like kids see through that, be able to, I've lost and I've grieved, but then out of that comes something cool, like another youngin' who's healthy and stuff, which is super, super, super awesome. So I'm super happy for you and Rachel.
Yeah.
I'm glad you reached out, man, because it's important, and I don't think kids get it, that you're going to go through some things. At the end of the year, every year, I have a thing that I tell my kids, because we've lost out to go to state the past couple of years and stuff, is if this is the worst day of your life, losing to go to state, you had a damn good life. Like your life was pretty good.
Yeah.
If it was your best day, because you were going to make it to state, you probably should do some reflecting on why the hell that was your best day of your life. As an 18-year-old playing baseball, like you made state, it's the greatest day ever.
Yeah.
Even if you go to the state tournament, like those.
For sure. Even if you win the state tournament.
Right? It is what I mean. At the end of the day, like I remember a couple of years ago when we won it with Bismarck, I went to work the next day. Like it was just like there's things that go on, like life happens, and it's just a part of it, something you can look back on.
Yeah.
But to give you some perspective of, no amount of those kind of small, minute things in the course of life will ever need to take precedence over these kind of things.
For sure.
So I appreciate you reaching out, man. It's super cool, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You're
Thank
the man,
you,
buddy.
Thank you.
Nolan, appreciate you letting use our spot, bud.
For sure.
What's up, everybody? That was pretty deep. Big shout out for Ryan for wanting to come on and tell his story about how he got through what for him and Rachel will more than likely be the worst day of their life. When he reached out to me a couple weeks back about doing this, I never would have thought that this was a platform for things like that, and I'm super glad that I did it, because I even told my wife I'm kind of worried because it's such a very serious topic that I never thought about this being all that serious. Maybe some serious tone and some serious thoughts, but nothing as serious as this. So I appreciate Ryan coming on, and one of the big takeaways I took from it is how you react to those situations. I know one of the big things that he mentioned was you can't do it by yourself. He had his pastor, he had people from his church, he had friends in the community, students, coaches. I mean, everybody reaching out to him, helping him. We talked about his friends cleaning his house because they knew they'd have people over after the service. Talked about the pastor driving them to and from Fargo. All these different kind of things. Just the little text messages that people sent or phone calls. Just, hey, if you need anything, let me know. And it's a big deal because you can't do it by yourself. You can't. You got to have some help. Very few, if anybody, can handle things like that by themselves. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to find a person who you know is going to help. Okay? If you're at some middle school, you know who you can go to. Streeter's Room is always open. Always, always, always open. And I think the one calming thing for me was you see how Ryan handled it. Even talking about it less than a year later, he's calm, collected in his thoughts. I know his faith plays a big part in that, but it's something to aspire to. Because I know for me, when tragedies like that is struck for me, losing a family member, something I'm really close to, my first emotion is not calm. It's not even sadness. It's, for the most part, anger. It's not the right emotion, but it's the one that I give, and it's something that I try to work on. But seeing how Ryan talked about it and what they went through is really aspiring to want to change and learn how to handle grief and be able to ask for help. And so I really appreciate Ryan coming on. I hope you guys got something out of it because it was fantastic for him to talk about his story, how he wanted to help kids this past month with another tragedy at Mandan High School with a young lady losing her life in a car crash, and how he helped those students and how students were able to come to him and because he's able to show empathy because he's gone through something like that. And that takes a lot, man. I'm super appreciative of Ryan coming on to tell his story. Super appreciative of Nolan Johnson letting us use Quantum Production Studio again. I know it's a couple times now we've gone a little high budget, but we're still here. Low budget, max effort. Enjoy your new year. Hug your loved ones, people. Peace.